Hello all, and welcome to tonight's beer review, which I am dubbing the Insomnia Back with a Vengeance review. So, like I said in my previous review, I moved shift times recently, and I've been cursed with insomnia since. I would have never ever guessed, despite having dealt with this for decades, that the primary cause of my insomnia was basically having, more of a being more of a night owl and indulging in my night owl tendencies rather than forcing myself to wake up at 5 o'clock every morning to go to work. I guess waking early, early to bed, early to rise is a very, very good motto to live by. Who would have thunk it? Ben Franklin, even though he didn't even live by that old motto that he coined himself. Anyways, what are we reviewing today? Well, I actually reviewed this fairly recently, within the past like 2 or 3 years, but I wanted to revisit it because this is one of the beers that's kind of come on to rotation for me because it is such an interesting beer and is also a beer that's pretty easy to get in Hawaii. So that's kind of a hard combo to meet in Hawaii. It's pretty hard to find beers that I find deeply interesting yet are easily obtainable. And I also didn't like my original review for this. It kind of doesn't really plunge the depths of the style for this because it's kind of a unique beer in that it is trying to follow more classic designs of beer. So, as the name says, and I mentioned this in the previous review too, but I kind of want to go deeper into it. It is called 1554. And this is not flavored with hops, but instead a traditional mixture of herbs and spices called a gruit or Gruit. I'm not sure how it's pronounced in Flemish or Walloon, which I guess would be the correct terminology you would use for this particular one, since this is a revival of a traditional beer style from Belgium called Zwert, meaning black, obviously. And lager yeast is used for this, but it is fermented at ale temperatures despite using bottom fermenting yeast. So, all in all, that leads to a very interesting taste profile. So, this is 6.0 ABV. And yeah, enlightened dark ale brewed with spice, a surprisingly bright taste, and a dry chocolatey finish. One evocative of dark brews enjoyed in Belgian taverns 500 years ago. Obviously, try to let this one warm up a little bit before you go and pour it out. So yeah, I'm going to pour this into sort of taster's glass here. Now the weather isn't quite right for this kind of beer, being that it's now Hawaiian summer and it's bleedingly hot. Kind of over poured it there. You can see a nice three-finger head, light brown. A nose evocative of licorice, dark spices, earthiness, prunes, brown bread. Yeah. Oh, and chocolate too. Base of chocolate that's kind of covered up by that more spicy, licorice-like herbaceous notes. Yeah. Onto the palate now, shall we? Hmm. This is a nicely complex beer on the palate as much as it is on the nose. And it's really one that evolves, over time, both in multiple sessions and in, time spent in the glass, warming up, as it were. Now, you don't really want it Hawaiian room temperature being about 78 degrees right now and humid as hell. But yeah, you definitely want this one to be about in the 60 to 70 range. Fahrenheit, that is, not Celsius. I would hate to go and see what beer tastes like at, 67 degrees Celsius, or Kelvin for that matter. Mm. So up front, you're met with this nice interplay of chocolatey notes and licorice notes. And of course, when I say licorice, I am referring to actual licorice taste, and not the sort of anise taste that is associated with licorice in America. It's not quite synonymous with licorice. There's a much deeper, earthy, almost like baritone note to it. Hints of a more biting kind of spice, not really spicy, but just a little bit more sharp edged and licorice kind of emerge in and out. The finish, you're just kind of left with sort of a slightly bitter roasted dark malt finish. There's not really hops in that bitterness in the finish. So it's a very subtle bitterness on the palate that remains. Top note is big licorice. You know, sort of roasted bitterness, dark chocolate. It interplays a lot on the palate, but on the top note, very much licorice, herbs, dark spice. The mouthfeel is unnervingly light for some reason, for something that has such, I'm not going to say intensity of taste, but complexity of taste. And at 6.0, it's not going to be, you know, too heavy to have more than two. You can have three or four of these over an extended period, and it won't kill you, it won't make you regret your life choices the next morning. Some subtle fruity notes that are more in the bouquet kind of show up on the palate. They tend to emerge more as it gets warmer and warmer, but they still are subdued compared to the primary notes. And what's interesting is that these notes can be very different from each other. I mean, chocolate and licorice are not ones that you think kind of mesh well, but they don't blend, or they kind of stand apart on the palate. So they it's more of an interplay rather than a mishmash, which is really what I like in taste complexity, is a sort of distinction and lack of muddiness in the palate. This is very distinct, very sharp, yet at the same time interwoven, you know, just different tastes emerging in and out without clashing with each other. And of course, the lack of hops in this means a general lack of a sort of rhinitis I tend to suffer with a lot of beers now. Isn't it kind of sucky to be primarily a beer reviewer and, you start developing an allergic reaction to the thing that you're going to review? It's kind of like Beethoven going deaf, if I may make an incredibly pretentious analogy. Yes, if you like dark beers, definitely give this one a shot. Obviously, it's not going to be as bitter as many dark beers. It's still going to be dark tasting, but yeah, the general lack of hops and the more herbal, spicy Gruit, I suppose, tasting notes make this very interesting. You know, I'm not too sure what the difference is in like the fermentation temperature add to it. I'm sure they're there, but I'm not like a brewer, so I can't really go and point it out, pinpoint it exactly. All I know is I like this beer, you know? And yeah. It says here serve 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. I'd say go a little bit warmer than that. Of course, your mileage may vary. Drink it at the temperature you prefer. But overall, yeah, definitely give this one a shot. It might be a little bit too weird for your taste, too non-beer like, being that it doesn't have hops. But I find it hits all the right spots for me. And like I said, I find it also nicely complex at a very cheap price point and with easy accessibility. So yeah, New Belgium 1554. I mean, you could go with yet another iteration of a Voodoo Ranger IPA, or you could try something unique and very different. Why don't you try that unique and very different thing? Anyways, I'm going to try to work on my upload schedule. Of course, the insomnia and the hour changes at work has kind of thrown my schedule off, including my upload schedule. So I'm going to go and try to find some sort of workaround for that so I can start uploading these videos that are stockpiling up again. I really need to go and work on getting like a regular release schedule out for these videos. But hopefully within the next few days I kind of figure something out. And yeah, that is your beer review for tonight, folks. Cheers.